Okay, well, we're gonna go over something real quick. I'm gonna try to keep this kind of short. I've been kind of long-winded on all the videos that I've recorded thus far. What am I gonna cover now? Um, well, kind of a strategy that I've kind of been toying with over the last couple weeks. Um, the big thing that I've come to realize, and this is more of a, I'm noticing it, so I'm hoping that it's something that I've been come to realize will help you guys in your training. But a lot of what I've been dealing with lately is where should I focus my energy? Where should I focus my time? What information should I focus on to get a better understanding of where I need to be? Well, that's all kind of broad and stuff like that. So let me kind of zero it in. Um, my best or my advice to anyone that's going certification is um, take a practice test. Um, Practice tests are usually 70 to 85% accurate based to the exam criteria and to the vendor in which you're certifying for. Now there are vendor neutral like CompTIA. I have their A plus certification. Um, they're vendor neutral. I've had the A plus almost a year now. It's actually gotten me two jobs. One as desktop support, which is second level to you got help desk, desktop support, then you have like, you know, administrator. It would pretty much be the next step above that. So I've done level one, two, and three desktop support. Um, I've done level one and two network support. Now I'm doing level two and three network support on the WAN side. So uh, if you focus your time and energy in the areas in which you need to strengthen, it will come quicker to you, in my opinion. Now, that being said, cbtnuggets.com, if you go to their website, they have a deal. It's probably going to be almost every day for 24 hours. What they do is hang on one second. I just noticed my screen was flickering really, really bad, and I wasn't sure if it was going to die on me or what have you. But, anywho, CBT Nuggets has a cram nugget, which is $24 for 24 hours. That was right. $24 for 24 hours. And you get full access to their entire video library as well as full access. Well, actually, it's full access to the entire website. And what that gives you the ability to do is do exam prep. So if you're a Microsoft candidate and you're looking for to take a Microsoft exam, instead of spending $125 and going to take the test, you can go pay 24 and take an exam and kind of gauge yourself as to where you need to strengthen. Are you on target? Are you getting all the questions right? It's not uh, one for one, meaning it's not going to be an exact copy of the test. It will be very close to it, um, and it'll give you a pretty good guide as to where you will fall. So, in my opinion, when you're doing your studies, go through your studies, read the books you need to read to gather the information that you need to understand the material. Watch the videos that you need to watch. Go online, watch whatever document or whatever, go to whatever documentation you need to go to understand the material. Once you have a basic understanding of how it works, then take that understanding and put it into practice. Go onto the command line. If you're doing Cisco, if you're doing Microsoft, try, and if you're working with Active Directory, set up a domain controller. Go in, set up some sites and some users and some groups and some OUs, organizational units, stuff like that. Now, myself, I'm more Cisco focused, so I'm going to try to configure VLANs on a switch. I'm going to try to route them, put some access control on it, learn how to NAT, network address translation, be able to take your private addresses and put them through a router and connect them to a public IP address, and so on and so forth. But your best bet when it comes to anyone that's looking for certification is go through and definitely take a practice test. I highly recommend doing that because it will give you a good idea of where you are at. I mean, it'll tell you where you're weak, and don't go through and Google all the questions. Don't go through, what's a VLAN? I don't know, let's Google it. Focus on the material. And here's one big thing. This actually kind of pisses me off when I talk to people that just exam dump. They brain dump. All I want to do is gather enough information to go pass the test. Well, I have no time for that person. If that's you, you might as well stop listening to the video, because you are the person that I hate the most, and I'll explain why. And I'm not, I might sound a little negative towards those type of people, but my goal through IT training, IT certification, isn't just to go learn the stuff, to go pass a test, now I have a certification. That doesn't do a damn thing for you. Okay? Point blank, if you're a candidate and you want to become something in a specific industry, whether it's nursing, whether it's carpentry, whether it's metalworking, you have to know your trade. That goes with anything. I mean, nobody can argue that. That is it. But when you're learning your material, you have to go through and, well, know the material. And the whole point of certification testing is to test your knowledge at that level. Cisco, Microsoft, Linux, VMware, Checkpoint, you name it. All of these vendors have certification tests for people out there that want to get certified in that particular arena. My particular goal right now, like I said, is Cisco. And when you go take a certification test, you're being tested, like I said, on your knowledge of that material at that level. So when you're brain dumping for the CCNA, and all you want to know to make sure, all you want to really make sure is that you know IPv6, and you can go in and you know that there's 128 bits in the address, and the first 64 are network and the last 64 are host, and this, that, and the other, and you can just turn it on the interface level and enable IPv6 unicast routing and things of that nature. Yeah, okay, that's great. But can you actually make it happen? Well, I know what it does. That doesn't matter. For the most part on the CCNA exam, it's going to be more theory at that level, but you will be tested on it. So and that was actually kind of a bad example, but when it comes to VTP, VLAN trunking protocol, you'll get tested on that. It's an integral part of switching, and the CCNA focuses more on switching than it does on routing, and the CCNP level focuses more on routing than it does on switching. Your switching will be more focused on first hop redundancy, meaning when it leaves the switch and goes to the router, if one router is down, it has the ability to go to another one. HSRP, VRRP, GLBP, well actually the first two, HSRP and VRRP, are first hop redundancy. GLBP is load balancing between the two interfaces. So your goal, your goal should be, I should say, when you're going through, is learning the material, applying it, verifying, and troubleshooting if the first two don't work. And then you go back and whatever you're weak in, you study that more. If it's spanning tree, you learn spanning tree better. Maybe you don't know the difference between a designated port and a root port. Maybe you don't know the root bridge election process. Maybe you don't know how cost is calculated. Whatever the case may be. these are things that you have to know. So if you go about it in a structured approach, meaning you learn basic level understanding, you go in, you configure it, and then you're good. You can confirm that you understand the concept to that point. That's what that means. Now, if you get into a situation where you're asked to configure VLANs 10, 20, 30, and 40, and we're not even going to get into layers 3 switching, but you need to set it up on a router on the stick. Well, are you going to know how to do that? Are you going to know how to set up .1Q tunneling or trunking between the switch and the router, and go into the router and set up that particular trunk port to route for, or to set up for that VLAN, and then put a sub interface on there? Do you know how to do that? That's other things. Then you'll get into access control. Do you know the difference between standard and extended access control? How they differ, how they're the same. These are all things that you're going to need to know. So one thing I highly recommend is, no matter which vendor you're going through, whether it's Cisco, Microsoft, Linux, Checkpoint, Oracle, I'm running out of names here. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. CompTIA, anybody that you're going to go through for certification training, 99% of the time they're going to have at least a criteria for you to follow for that particular exam. They're going to have an overview of what could be covered on the exam. Your job as a candidate is to go through and make sure you have a solid understanding of each one of those topics. I thought I did. I could go in and somebody could ask me about IPv6. Well, how do you configure it on an interface? Well, you go into the interface level, you turn IPv6 routing, and you type in, you're going to set it up and put the EUI, I had to think of the term, on there, so that you're going to be able to use the MAC address of the local interface, or that local subnet, and you're going to be able to use the EUI, which is taking the 48-bit MAC address, throwing the FFFE in between the the first 6, which is the OUI, which is specific to the vendor, and then the last 6, which is specific to the card itself, the device. You're going to stick FFFE in between there to make it 64 bits, so that you're able to use 64 bits for your host and 64 bits for your network, and then you're able to route IPv6 on that interface. So these are things you're going to need to know. I still need practice with IPv6. I'm not going to lie. I'm not 100%. I'm not the strongest in it. I know more about it than some people, but not as much as some others. So, am I strong enough to go in and set it up an entire network? No. I would not be able to do that. And I'll be straight up with somebody. Do you know how to set up IPv6? To a degree. I feel like I'm pretty strong at it. I know how to subnet it and things of that nature. So one thing that you need to do, and I feel like I don't want to sound like I'm barking or on my soapbox, but there are certain things people need to know going into the certification test, and I see a lot of places that I belong to forums on, and I get updates in my email to people that are, I'm in a study group, or I'm in a discussion group or something like that with somebody, and I hear brain dump. Well, did you know that Cisco has a, I forget the exact technical term, but they have an engine that they run your exam through that will detect a brain dump. So depending, they have a roundabout amount of time that it should take you to answer a particular question. So if it's a subnetting question, the average person should take, say, 17 seconds to answer that question. Well, if you go through and you answer it in 7 seconds and you're dead on, versus another question, I'm just going based on what I think they might be doing. I don't know specifically what the algorithm is, or what parameters or specifications that they put your test through, but somebody goes through and checks to see if you brain dumped. I don't know how they do it. I just know that they do it because there's been plenty of websites that I've read about to where they do this, and people have been dinged. They've passed, but then it goes through because like if you have a 43 question test, like the last Cisco exam I took was 43 questions, and they gave you 75 minutes. Well, if you answer the questions in 25 minutes, wow, that's really, really fast. And you passed, well, they're going to go through and they're going to be like, oh, well, I don't think anybody, I don't even think a CCIE could go through a test that quickly. Maybe they could. But my honest opinion is if you're going through a test that quickly, I mean, even if you do pass, okay, my hat's off to you, one, for going that quickly, and second hat off for passing. But I think, not 100% sure, that you might get dinged and they may not pass you. I don't know. But what I do know is you need to be careful about brain dumping. If you go in and you just brain dump, okay. I guess my main point for brain dumping is if you do a brain dump on a test and you learn just enough so you can pass, and you pass the exam, but then you don't take that certification with you and actually apply it, that's just a waste of time. And then you might not, you may know the conceptual side of it, but if I was to take you and throw you on a router and put you on the phone with a client and the client says, okay, I can't get from here to here, what do I do? Well, what's the first couple things you need to do? What's the problem? I mean, and once you narrow it down, is it a routing issue? Is it a VLAN issue? Is it a switching issue? Is it an access list? Is it a firewall? There's a bunch of different elements that come into play when you're talking routing or switching, because you can do both. You can put a firewall in between your router and your switch, and that can be preventing things. You could have, depending on the type of switch, if it's a 6500 chassis switch, you could have VLAN access control, meaning particular VLANs are not allowed to traverse this particular part of the switch and go to another VLAN. You know what I mean? So you can also do it basically on the port. You click a computer in a particular port, and that port is only allowed to go to the internet. It's not allowed to go anywhere else. So you can get very granular with some things. So when you hear me talk about people that brain dump, okay, you might know how that works, but do you know how to get on the command line and configure it, verify it, and troubleshoot it? If you can't do that, then to me, you're not a CCNA or a CCIE. I really have no idea how you would. I've never taken the CCIE, written or lab, but everything that I've heard about it, you really can't fake the CCIE. Maybe the written, you might be able to brain dump the written, but even if you were able to brain dump the written, I don't even see how you could pass the lab, because there's a lot of configuration stuff that. So when you're for anyone that's thinking, oh, I'll just brain dump, bad idea. But anyway, I want to get off my horse when it comes to that, because I feel like I'm just ranting on about brain dumps. But anyway, when you're studying, you definitely want to make sure that you study the material you need to study. So you read your books, you watch your videos, you configure, you get lots of command line. That is one thing that is absolutely a necessity. Absolute necessity. When you're studying for any vendor certification, you should have practical experience. Not just be able to read the book and be able to recall some commands or recall a scenario, but actually be able to get on the router, the switch, go into the operating system, whatever it may be, and actually make it work. If you can't do that, then you're not going to pass. It's as simple as that. there's going to be several times, at least in Cisco, I've only taken Cisco certification exams. Well, okay, I have the CompTIA A+, but that was all multiple choice, so there was no configuration involved. But quite frankly, the A+ was kind of just a bunch of memorization. That's all that was. That to me is just the A+ got me a job, and it validates that I have at least foundation level understanding of hardware and software, which I do. So for the most part, the A+ is for somebody that wants to validate that they know what they're talking about. I mean, it really doesn't say that you can fix a desktop issue or a network issue. I mean, it just covers the material. So not that I'm discounting the A+ certification, because it did give me a job. So I just want to say that the A+ is not going to be it's not going to get you a server or a senior administrator position with the A+. It's just not going to happen. But you at least, to the employer, okay, well, the A+ covers hardware and software. He holds that, so at least he has some understanding of what's going on. But even network guys have to troubleshoot printers and applications, so it's going to be, you're going to need it one way or the other. But anyway, covering the reading material, covering the video material, getting practical hands-on experience is going to be key, beyond all the other ones, because you can kind of fudge your way through the command line and figure it out using context-sensitive help, the question mark, type in the command, and right next to the letter, you type the question mark to tell you all the commands start with that letter, or all your options for something like show IP space question mark, and all the options for that particular command. So there are ways of kind of working your way around if you don't know what to do, but you're still going to need some sort of formal training, because someone's going to have to show you how to get in and how to log in, and where to point the router, where to point the switch to go what you're looking for, because you're not going to do get into interface configuration mode if you want to know what the access list is telling you, or you're not going to go. Well, you could do a show IP route if you want to see how a route is being NATed. I mean, because it'll show you which route it's going to take, and then you do a NAT, and you'll be able to see how it's NATed. There are certain things that are going to be obvious. Like, you're not going to go to show IP protocols to see which interfaces are up. You're going to do a show IP interface brief. Which interfaces are up and what are the IP addresses associated with them. So there's going to be some obvious ones that are going to jump out at you in the beginning, but your big thing is, at least the CCNA level, is to get a foundation level understanding of how things work. I recommend going through the Network Plus if you're taking the CCNA, because that'll at least give you a understanding of all the different types of devices that you'll see in a network, what they do, how they work together, some of the basic ways to configure them, what are some of the things you might hear, buzzwords, Ether channel, VLANs, routing, switching, spanning tree, things of that nature. What's a firewall? What's an IPS? What's an IDS? How do they work? What is NAT? How does that work? Things of that nature. So you'll run into that. So what's a Wireshark capture? What is switch port analysis? Things like that. Some are buzzwords, some are actually hardcore, down nitty-gritty. Figure out why something's doing what it's doing. Sometimes you have to go to the application layer to figure out why your route's not working. There's a thing called NBAR, which is, if I remember correctly, it's network-based application recognition, and it's I don't know exactly what's used to do that, but I do know that you're able to see what the application is doing, so you can kind of determine if it's a network issue or if it's an application issue. Because the network could be working fine, and all of a sudden the internet is slow. So it could be the website you're going to, or it could be your link. It's really hard to troubleshoot application if it's intermittent, but furthermore, anybody that's studying for the CCIE, you really don't need to listen to me to explain what I'm doing. But if you do, I will share just a couple minutes of what I'm doing for CCIE prep. Of course, the first one you have to take is the written, which currently is $350, and it's you have 18 months from the time that you pass the written to make your first attempt at the lab. So my short and long-term goals are as follows. My short-term goal is sometime this summer, between May and August, which is December 2012 right now. I'm assuming sometime May through August of 2013 to take the written exam. Do I really need to wait that long? I don't know. I have some books that I want to read. I have some videos that I want to go through. I want to know more than just the conceptual side of it. I want to actually be able to look at a running configuration and go, oh, I know what's going on. And then you have the lab exam after that. Again, reading some books, getting some in-depth understanding of how routing works, how switching works, quality of service, multicast, MPLS, IPv6, anything that's goes beyond just plain routing or switching, you're going to want to know in depth on, because you can put quality of service on a switch, you can put quality of service on a router. You can also put multicast on a router, and I believe you can put multicast on a switch. I believe. I don't know for sure, because I haven't gotten to that. I really haven't gotten into multicast. The extent of my multicast understanding is I understand PIM, which is protocol independent multicast, PIM sparse mode, PIM dense mode. So I really don't know much about multicast. Like I said, I'm still learning. But I plan on getting a book about multicast, about security, about quality of service, so that I can get a non-Cisco vendor related book about those topics. So I'm going to open my written folder here. One more. So everything that you see right here, quality of service, network services, MPLS, IPv6, there's BGP books. I have a BGP book downloaded. Routing TCP/IP Volume 1 and 2 will cover RIP, EIGRP, OSPF, and BGP. And then, of course, Radia Perlman's spanning tree book will cover spanning tree and VLANs. And then Ether channel is just a way to take spanning tree and kind of, what's the best way to put it? Ether channel is a great way of taking two trunk links, one being blocked, one being forwarded, and bond them together so they're both forwarding. Okay. Now, I don't know, and this is where the lack of understanding comes in. I don't know that if you have Ether channel running and you are going from switch to switch, then let's say you have 3 switches and they're all Ether channel together, one to the next, if how spanning tree works in that regard. So I don't know if it's you don't have to worry about it because it just bonds the links, and it looks at it as a single link, and there is no spanning tree. I don't know, because okay, now that I'm thinking about it for a quick second, if you have single connections to router 1 to router 2 and then router 2 to router 3, and nothing from router 1 to router 3, there's no, the way I'm thinking about it, there is no way to loop in that regard. It's only point-to-point connections between the switches. You know, point-to-point from switch 1 to switch 2, and from switch 2 to switch 3. I could be wrong about that, but that's why I'm gonna read a book on spanning tree, because I want to know. You know, it's a question that I have. You know, am I right? I don't know. Am I wrong? I have no idea. I have a theory that it works that way, but you know, I won't know until I actually get into the meat of the book and things of that nature. So right now it is 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and I am about to get into a book. That is the life of a person like me that is studying for the CCIE certification, where you don't have much of a social life. I'm married and I have 2 kids, So most of my time is spent during when I come home from work, dealing with the kids and the wife. Once dinner's over with, between the 7 and 8 o'clock hour to about 9 and 10 o'clock at night is study time. It's time for me to get downstairs. Usually from 7 to 10, I study pretty much 7 days a week. So it's read 50, 60 pages of a book, take some notes, maybe watch a video, and then it's pretty much bedtime. Now, every now and again, I do run into the I need a break. So I do have a couple of video games on my computer that I will dive into. So I'll do a little bit of Medal of Honor or Call of Duty, or maybe watch some music videos on YouTube. But the majority of my time is spent in study. I don't really have time to not be studying, and and honestly, not everybody can be a robot. And from 6 to 10, I will study. From 10 to 11:15, I will review understanding of material. I'm not like that. You got to take a break. You got to give your brain a time to absorb the information you've been throwing at it. Because if all you do is read, okay, I understand that the CCENT is the very first certification that Cisco put out, or you know what I mean. You need a break. Give your brain a break. You're gonna need that. So, and then I do networking in my day job, so I'm dealing with this stuff pretty much all day, every day. So, um, it will come quicker to people that deal with it more often. So, like if you're an accountant and you deal with numbers and statistics and taxes and percentages all day long, and then you try to get into networking, two different ways to looking at things. Or you're a mechanic and you get into networking. You want a different career or what have you. It's gonna be difficult for you to grasp it if you're working in a different industry. I work in the industry, so to me it's gonna be a lot easier um, to gain the experience and gain the understanding than it will be for somebody that doesn't work in it. So try to get like an internship if you can in the industry you want to get into. So if you're gonna do nursing, try to get like a CNA, or you know um, work as a do some like internships or something to that effect. Do something to gain some experience, because that's only going to aid you when it comes to getting a job. You know, a lot of places look for experience. Well, I got fortunate that I had 10 years of warehousing behind me, and that's actually what propelled me into my first IT job was um, training the the warehouse staff at a warehouse how to use their new computer system, because I knew computers and I know warehousing, so I was able to go in and apply both sides of the game. I knew where to be on a dock, and I knew where to be in a warehouse, and what was safe and what wasn't safe, and you know the lingo. So when people were talking, I knew what they were talking about. So it um, in that regard, it aided me that way, and that was my first job in the IT industry, was more technical writer and trainer, but it's on my resume. And then I did that for about a week, and then the same position, or the same employer, had me do more networking. So I switched from that position over to a consulting side, to where I was um, using FogServer, which is actually on my YouTube channel, to deploy images to, I think we did 150 computers in one day. So we just set up a bunch of switches, set up the image in FogServer on a Ubuntu box, and forwarded it all to all these computers. So we loaded, what was it, XP Pro, I think. We loaded XP Pro on the computer and sent it out, and went that way. So, that worked out. We got all these computers imaged, instead of, writing or creating like 200 copies of the disk and going out to each computer and doing it manually. This was a whole lot easier. But, uh, but that's basically where it boils down to. It's, you need to make sure that you cover the material, that you cover all the material you need to, and then whatever you're not very strong in, you spend extra time in that. So go check out CBT Nuggets website and do the 24-hour cram nugget for the day. Take a couple practice tests to see where you're at. I would much rather see somebody that is serious about going beyond just a certification. They get the certification and they plan on actually using it, and not just brain dumping for it. I'd much rather see somebody spend $24, take a practice test, and go, oh, I'm not ready, and then reschedule for a later date and time, and then go in and pass it, and have the cert, not waste your money. I thought I was ready, and I was wrong. It's gonna give you a good idea. It's not 100% dead on. It's not gonna be like, oh well, yeah, It's not gonna probably you are ready for the exam. You have to make that assessment on your own. So, you just gotta try to be smart about it. And I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm trying to pass that on to anyone that wants to listen to me. So, if you're definitely set where you're gonna go, be diligent in how you get there. Don't just go, oh, I'll take one semester a month or one class a semester, and then I get there when I get there. Well, if you have to take 30 classes, it's gonna take you a long time to get through school. So I take between 3 to 5 classes a semester. Plus, I work full time and I have kids. So, and on top of that, I study for IT certification. So, my one teacher called me the poster child for somebody that wants to do better for themselves. When I first went back to school, I was like, oh crap, I had to spend 3 years working at this place till I finished my degree. And then once I started talking to my teachers, and they're like, oh yeah, you might want to go get certified in this and certified in that, and that'll help you, maybe get a better job. And it did. It took me, study for the A plus was a good 6 months, easily 6 months, to go through all the video and read the book and practice and study, because there were some questions on the test that I honestly didn't know the answer to, but I took an educated guess, and went that route. So definitely like I said, be diligent and make sure that you're studying the material that you need to cover. That's going to help you gain the knowledge to pass the test. And then beyond that, make sure you can actually make it work. And if you're not an exam tester, go through the certification. Okay, take one step back. If you're like a systems admin already, or you're desktop support, but you want to know more server side, you take a couple server classes, you read a book on server, you watch some videos on server, you think you know server. Well, going through the certification track will teach you everything you need to know about that particular section of server. Because, quite honestly, if you're going to be a server guy, are you going to be more application side? Are you going to be development? Or are you going to be, administration? Are you going to be an Active Directory guy? Are you going to be, are you going to be a SQL server? Which direction are you going? And you can tell I'm not a server person because I don't deal with them. I'm throwing out everything that I know about servers, which isn't a lot. So, which part of the server do you want to deal with? Do you want to deal with the engineering side of it, the administration side of it, which is two different things? So trying to understand that is going to be another thing. Is figure out what you want to do. So once you've figured that out, and you do systems administration at your day-to-day job, and then your boss says, hey, I want you to get certified. Certification is going to fill in all the gaps that you have formed going through your either your studies or your job and learning your job. Going through certification will fill in all those gaps. You'll learn what the little I don't exactly know what that acronym stands for, but now I do, and I know what it does. That's going to make you that much more valuable. That's one thing that certification does. It makes you more valuable and more marketable to the employer. They're going to look and go, oh, well, you've gone through certification. You at least know what it is and how it works. You know, you might not be able to troubleshoot it, you know, like a senior guy, but at least you know what it is. So I'm gonna get off my horse and let you guys free. So um, if you have any questions, rriker82@yahoo.com. Don't be afraid to shoot me an email. I definitely look forward to hearing from you guys. I haven't updated anything on my YouTube channel, which I'm probably gonna start doing here this weekend as I'm reading. I'm gonna start converting these videos over from Camtasia over to YouTube video and go from there. So, like I said, any questions, shoot me an email. I hope this has been informative for you, and I thank you for viewing.